What if everything you've been told about losing belly fat is incomplete? You wake up early, you work out, you eat clean, you cut calories, you stay disciplined, and yet your belly doesn't change. It stays. Stubborn, resistant, almost untouchable. And after a while, a quiet thought starts to form. Maybe this is just aging. Maybe my metabolism is broken. Maybe this is as good as it gets. But what if that's not true? What if the problem isn't that you're not trying hard enough, but that your body is not responding to effort the way you think it does? Because here's the reality most people never hear. Belly fat, especially visceral fat, is not controlled by how hard you work. It's controlled by signals. Invisible biological signals that your body reads every single day. And those signals are not based on your motivation. They're not based on your willpower. They're not even based purely on calories. That's the belief we've all been taught. Eat less, move more, burn more than you consume. And yes, that works for some types of fat. But visceral fat, the fat wrapped around your organs, plays by a different set of rules. It is not passive storage. It is defensive tissue. It exists because your body believes it needs protection. Protection from stress. Protection from instability. Protection from uncertainty. And when your body feels that something is off even slightly, it does not release that fat. It holds on tighter. This is why two people can follow the same diet, do the same workouts, and get completely different results. Because their bodies are receiving different signals. Now, here's the part that changes everything. Your body doesn't decide to burn that fat in the gym. It doesn't decide during your workout. It doesn't even decide when you're eating less. It decides much earlier than that. In fact, it often happens before your day even begins. Before breakfast. Before coffee. Before your first decision of the day. There is a small window of time right after you wake up where your body is quietly setting the direction for the next 12 to 16 hours. A window where your hormones are shifting, where energy is being released, where your metabolism is deciding, should I store or should I burn? And most people miss it completely because they're focused on the wrong battlefield. They try to force fat loss later in the day without realizing the decision has already been made. This is why you can do everything right and still feel stuck. Because fat loss is not just about what you do. It's about when you do it. And more importantly, it's about the message your body receives. Once you understand that everything changes. Because now, instead of fighting your body, you start working with it. And that's when visceral fat finally begins to respond. To understand why your belly fat feels so resistant, you first need to understand that not all fat in your body behaves the same way. Most people think fat is just fat. Something you store when you eat too much and burn when you eat less. But your body doesn't see it that simply. There are actually different types of fat, and they serve very different purposes. The fat you can pinch under your skin is called subcutaneous fat. This is the fat most people focus on. It sits just beneath the surface. And while it can be frustrating from an appearance standpoint, metabolically, it's relatively passive. It stores energy. And when you create a calorie deficit, it can be gradually reduced. But visceral fat is different. Completely different. Visceral fat is stored deep inside your abdomen. It wraps around your organs, your liver, your pancreas, your intestines. It sits close to the systems that keep you alive. And because of that, your body treats it differently. This is not just storage. This is defensive fat. From an evolutionary perspective, this made perfect sense. When your body perceived danger, whether it was starvation, stress, or uncertainty, it needed a reliable energy reserve close to your vital organs. So it built one. Visceral fat acts like an emergency battery. Protected, strategic, controlled. And that's why it's so hard to lose. Because your body is not trying to get rid of it. It's trying to protect it. Now here's where it becomes even more important. Visceral fat is not just sitting there. It is highly biologically active. It contains a dense concentration of receptors, especially for hormones like cortisol and insulin. These receptors act like sensors. They are constantly listening to signals from your body. Signals that answer one simple question. Are we safe or are we under threat? When cortisol rises, your stress hormone visceral fat cells respond by pulling energy inward. They tighten. They store more. They prepare for survival. And when insulin rises, your storage hormone, the message becomes even clearer. Lock the energy in. Do not release it. This is why visceral fat doesn't respond well to force. You can train harder, eat less, push yourself further. But if your hormonal signals are telling your body that something is wrong, visceral fat will not let go. Because to your biology, releasing that fat would be risky. It would mean giving up protection. And your body doesn't take that lightly. This is the key shift most people miss. Visceral fat is not a calorie problem. It is a signal problem. Until those signals change, nothing else truly works. But once they do, everything begins to move in a different direction. Now that you understand what visceral fat is, the next step is to understand what actually controls it. Because visceral fat doesn't respond to effort. It responds to hormones. And two hormones matter more than anything else: cortisol and insulin. Think of them as a system. Not separate, but working together. Cortisol is your stress hormone. It rises when your body feels pressure, whether that pressure is physical, emotional, or metabolic. When cortisol increases, your body shifts into a protective state. It begins to mobilize energy. It pulls fuel into the bloodstream. It prepares you to act. From a survival perspective, this makes sense. If danger is present, your body needs energy ready. But here's the problem. Cortisol doesn't just release energy. It also tells your body to protect your reserves, especially visceral fat. Because from your body's perspective, that fat is your emergency backup. So when cortisol stays elevated, visceral fat receives a clear signal. Hold on, do not release. Now let's bring in insulin. Insulin is your storage hormone. Its job is to take energy, especially glucose, and move it out of the bloodstream into your cells. When insulin rises, your body shifts into storage mode. Energy goes in, and nothing comes out. This is the critical part. When insulin is elevated, your body cannot access stored fat effectively. Not slowly, not inefficiently, but biologically blocked. Now imagine what happens when these two hormones combine. Cortisol rises, bringing energy into circulation and signaling stress. Then insulin follows, locking that energy into storage. You end up in a loop. Energy is being moved, but not used. Stored, but not released. And visceral fat sits right in the center of that system. Highly sensitive, highly reactive, listening to every signal. This is why the combination is so powerful. Cortisol tells your body to prepare and protect. Insulin tells your body to store and lock. Together, they create a perfect environment for visceral fat to stay exactly where it is. And here's the part most people don't realize. This can happen even if you're doing everything right. You wake up stressed. You rush. You drink strong caffeine. You eat quickly. You push your body into action. From the outside, it looks like discipline. But from the inside, your biology sees something else. It sees instability, pressure, demand, and it responds accordingly. Cortisol rises sharply. Insulin follows. And visceral fat tightens its grip, not because your body is broken, but because it's doing exactly what it was designed to do: protect you. This is why trying to force fat loss often fails. Because you're working against the system that controls it. You're trying to override signals instead of changing them. But once you understand this interaction, once you see how cortisol and insulin work together, you begin to realize something important. Fat loss is not about fighting your body. It's about changing the conditions your body responds to. Because when those signals shift, Visceral fat doesn't need to be forced. It becomes available on its own. And that's where real change begins. Now here's the part that changes everything. Because once you understand this, you stop trying harder and start timing smarter. There is a specific window in your day where your body is the most responsive. A narrow, powerful window that most people completely ignore. And it happens within the first 1 to 2 hours after you wake up. Before breakfast. Before caffeine. Before your day fully begins. In this moment, your body is already active internally. Even if you haven't moved yet, your brain is waking up, your hormones are shifting, and most importantly, your liver is releasing glucose into your bloodstream. This is natural. Your body does this every morning. It's preparing you for action. It's giving you energy before you even ask for it. Now, here's what makes this moment so important. At this stage, insulin is still low. You haven't eaten yet, so your body is not in storage mode. It's in a state of availability. Energy is present, but not yet locked away. And this creates a very unique condition. You have fuel circulating, but your body hasn't decided what to do with it yet. This is the decision point. This is where your metabolism is quietly asking, should I use this energy or store it? And the answer depends entirely on what you do next. Most people miss this. They wake up, they check their phone, they rush, they drink strong coffee, they eat quickly, and in doing so, they send a very specific signal: stress, urgency, demand. From your body's perspective, this doesn't look like a calm environment. It looks like pressure. So cortisol rises sharply. Insulin follows. And just like that, the decision is made. Energy is stored. Fat remains locked. And the rest of your day follows that direction. But what if you change that? What if, instead of rushing into your day, you allowed your body to use that energy first? Because here's what happens when you do. If you stay in that low insulin state, and you begin to use the glucose your liver has already released, your muscles start absorbing that energy directly, not through insulin, but through movement, even light movement, walking, stretching, gentle activity. This activates pathways inside your muscles that pull glucose out of your bloodstream without triggering a strong insulin response. Energy is used, not stored. And because insulin stays low, the doors to fat, especially visceral fat, remain open. This is the shift. This is the moment where your body moves from protection to release. And it doesn't require intensity. It doesn't require effort. It requires timing. Because in this early window, your body is not resisting you. It's listening. Every action you take sends a message. Safe or stressed. Use energy or store it. And that message carries forward. It doesn't just affect the next hour. It affects your entire day. When you use energy early, insulin stays more stable. Your liver reduces unnecessary glucose output later. Your blood sugar becomes more balanced. Your cravings decrease. Your metabolism shifts toward using fat more consistently. All from a simple change in timing. This is why two people can live almost identical lives, but see completely different results. Because one person aligns with this window, and the other overrides it. This is the lever most people never touch. Not because it's hidden, but because it's overlooked. They focus on effort, on discipline, on pushing harder, without realizing that their body has already made its decision before any of that begins. But now you see it. This early window is not just another part of your day. It is the moment your body sets its direction. And once you learn how to use it, everything that follows becomes easier. Because you're no longer forcing fat loss. You're allowing it. Now that you understand how powerful that early morning window is, the next step is just as important. Because this is where most people unknowingly destroy their results. Not because they're lazy, not because they lack discipline, but because they're doing the wrong things at the wrong time. And the worst part? These mistakes often look like healthy habits. Let's start with the most common one: intense morning cardio. You wake up and immediately push your body. Running, HIIT, fasted workouts, high effort. From the outside, it looks perfect. You're burning calories, you're sweating, you're doing the work. But inside your body, something very different is happening. That intensity spikes cortisol, not slightly, but sharply. And remember what cortisol signals: stress, pressure, demand. Your body interprets this as a potential threat. And when that happens, it doesn't release fat. It protects it, especially visceral fat. Instead of opening access to stored energy, your body tightens its grip. So even though you feel like you're doing more, you may actually be reinforcing the exact condition that keeps fat locked in place. Now let's move to the next mistake: strong caffeine immediately after waking. Coffee isn't the problem. Timing is. When you consume high doses of caffeine right after waking, especially on an empty stomach, you amplify your natural cortisol spike. Instead of a smooth rise, you create a surge. Your nervous system goes from calm to stimulated instantly. Again, the message is clear. Something is happening. Stay alert. Conserve energy. And once that signal is sent, your metabolic direction shifts towards storage, not release. Now, the third mistake: eating too early. This is one of the most misunderstood habits. You wake up, and within minutes you eat. Breakfast. Snacks. Something small just to start the day. But here's what that does. It raises insulin immediately. And as soon as insulin rises, fat burning is suppressed. That early window where insulin was low and energy was available is gone. The decision is made. Store, not burn. And once that direction is set, your body continues to follow it for hours. Now, here's the mistake that seems logical, but often backfires. Fasting combined with stress. Some people skip breakfast, but they rush. They drink coffee, they check emails, they push themselves into action. They think they're doing fasting correctly, but what they're actually doing is creating a state of high stress without fuel. Blood sugar drops, cortisol rises to compensate, and eventually, insulin rebounds later in the day. The result? Instability. And once again, visceral fat receives the same message. Protect. Do not release. This is the pattern. Different behaviors, same signal. Stress plus insulin imbalance equals fat stays locked. And this is why so many people feel stuck. They're not failing because they're doing nothing. They're failing because they're unknowingly reinforcing the wrong signals. Every morning, day after day. But here's the shift. The goal is not to do more, not to push harder, not to be more extreme. The goal is to remove the signals that tell your body to defend itself. Because once those signals disappear, your body stops holding on. And that's when things finally begin to change. So if intense workouts don't work in that early window, and rushing your body creates the wrong signals, what actually works? The answer is surprisingly simple. Gentle movement. Not running. Not pushing. Not forcing. Just walking. And at first, this can feel almost too easy. Too slow, too insignificant to matter. But biologically, it changes everything. Because during that early morning window, your body is already releasing glucose into your bloodstream. Energy is available. The question is, what happens to it? If you do nothing, that glucose lingers. And when it lingers too long, insulin rises to manage it. Once insulin rises, the system shifts into storage mode. And fat, especially visceral fat, becomes inaccessible. But when you introduce light movement, something different happens. Your muscles begin to pull glucose directly out of your bloodstream, not through insulin, but through a separate pathway triggered by muscle contraction. This is the key. your body has a mechanism that allows muscles to absorb glucose independently. It's efficient, it's controlled, and it doesn't require a hormonal spike. So instead of glucose staying in circulation, it gets used immediately, cleanly, naturally. And because it gets used, insulin doesn't need to rise. It stays low. And when insulin stays low, the doors to fat remain open. This is what most people miss. You don't need to force fat burning. You need to create the conditions where fat is allowed to be used. And gentle walking does exactly that. It redirects energy. It stabilizes your system. It tells your body, we are active, but not under threat. This distinction matters because your body responds very differently to calm movement than it does to stress. When movement is gentle, rhythmic, and controlled, cortisol stays stable. Your nervous system remains balanced. Your metabolism stays flexible. And that flexibility is what allows your body to switch between fuels, from glucose to fat, without resistance. Now compare that to intense exercise, high effort, high stress, high demand. Your body interprets that as pressure. And under pressure, it protects. But under calm conditions, it releases. This is why walking works. Not because it burns a large number of calories, but because it happens at the right time, in the right way. It aligns with your biology. It uses the energy your body has already prepared. And it keeps the system in a state where fat can be accessed naturally. Even 10 to 20 minutes is enough. You don't need more. You just need consistency. Because every morning, your body is listening. And when you send the right signal, it responds quietly, efficiently, without resistance. This is not about doing less. It's about doing what actually works. And sometimes, the simplest action done at the right moment has the greatest impact. What makes this simple morning shift so powerful is not what it does in the moment. It's what it changes for the rest of your day. Because once you guide your body correctly in that early window, the effects don't stop when the walk ends. They carry forward, quietly, systematically, for hours. The first change happens at the level of baseline insulin. By using the glucose your body released early in the morning, your system never needs to trigger a strong insulin response. And when insulin stays lower not just for minutes, but as a baseline throughout the day, something important happens. Fat is no longer constantly blocked. Your body gains access to stored energy between meals, not in bursts, but steadily. This alone begins to shift your metabolism away from constant storage toward gradual fat use. Now, let's look at the liver. Your liver plays a central role in managing energy. Every morning, it releases glucose to prepare you for activity. But if that glucose is not used, the system becomes imbalanced. Blood sugar rises. Insulin responds, and the cycle of storage begins. But when you use that glucose early, your liver receives a different message. Energy is being handled efficiently. There is no need to overproduce. So later in the day, it naturally reduces unnecessary glucose output. This creates a more stable internal environment. Blood sugar stays smoother, not because you restricted food, but because your system was aligned early, and when blood sugar is stable, insulin remains calmer. And when insulin remains calmer, fat remains accessible. Now let's talk about something people notice very quickly: appetite. When insulin and cortisol are constantly fluctuating, hunger becomes unpredictable. Cravings increase. Energy crashes. You feel the need to eat, not because your body truly needs fuel, but because your system is unstable. But when your morning starts with balanced signals, that instability disappears. Hunger becomes more natural, more proportional. Meals feel more satisfying. You don't need to fight cravings, because they simply aren't as strong. This is not willpower. This is physiology. and it changes how your entire day feels. Now we come to one of the most important shifts: fat oxidation. When insulin is lower and glucose is managed efficiently, your body becomes more willing to use fat as a fuel source. Not just during workouts, but during quiet periods. Between meals, during daily activity, this is where visceral fat begins to play a role. Because it is highly sensitive to insulin. When insulin drops, even slightly, visceral fat becomes one of the preferred sources of energy. And instead of being locked away, it starts to be used gradually, consistently, without force. This is the difference most people never experience. They try to burn fat for an hour, but spend the rest of the day in storage mode. This approach does the opposite. You may only act for 10-20 minutes in the morning, but your metabolism stays in a more favorable state for the next 10-12 hours. That's the leverage. Not intensity, not duration, but direction. And once that direction shifts, everything becomes easier. Your energy stabilizes, your hunger balances, your body stops resisting, because you are no longer forcing change. You are allowing it to happen. And that is what creates real, lasting results. At this point, you might be wondering, is this just theory, or is there real science behind it? Because everything we've talked about so far may sound simple, but underneath it, there is a very precise biological system at work. Let's break it down. First, we need to look at something called receptor density. Visceral fat is not just stored energy. It is packed with receptors, especially for hormones like cortisol and insulin, and not just a few, a high density of them. This means visceral fat is constantly listening to your internal environment. Even small changes in hormone levels can trigger a strong response. When cortisol rises, these receptors signal fat cells to hold energy closer. When insulin rises, they reinforce that signal even more. This is why visceral fat reacts faster and more aggressively than other types of fat. Now let's move to something even more interesting. A mechanism inside your muscles called GLUT4. GLUT4 is a transporter. Its job is to move glucose from your bloodstream into your muscle cells. And here's what makes it powerful. GLUT4 can be activated in two different ways. The first way is through insulin. This is what happens when you eat. Insulin rises, and glucose is pushed into cells. But there's a second pathway, one that doesn't depend on insulin at all. And that pathway is activated by muscle contraction. When you move even lightly, your muscles trigger GLUT4 to come to the surface of the cell and pull glucose in directly. No insulin spike required. This is exactly why gentle walking in the morning works so effectively. It allows your body to use circulating glucose without switching into storage mode. Now let's zoom out to a bigger system. Your circadian rhythm. Your body doesn't operate the same way all day. Your metabolism follows a daily cycle. Hormones rise and fall based on time. And in the morning, your body is naturally more metabolically flexible. This means it is better at switching between fuels, glucose, and fat. Your insulin sensitivity is also higher in the early part of the day. This means your body can handle glucose more efficiently, but only if it is guided correctly. If you overwhelm the system early with stress, food, or stimulation, you disrupt that natural rhythm. But if you align with it, everything becomes more efficient. Your muscles absorb glucose more easily. Your liver regulates energy more smoothly, and your body becomes more willing to access fat. All of this connects. Receptor density explains why visceral fat is so reactive. GLUT4 explains how movement can bypass insulin. Circadian rhythm explains why timing matters. And insulin sensitivity explains why the morning window is so powerful. This is not guesswork. It's not a trend. It's physiology. And once you understand how these systems work together, you stop relying on effort alone. You start working with your biology. And that's when the results begin to feel predictable. As simple as this routine sounds, it's also very easy to break. Not because it's complicated, but because most people instinctively try to improve it, and in doing so, they destroy the very signals that make it work. The first mistake is turning walking into a workout. You start adding intensity, walking faster, adding hills, tracking calories, trying to optimize it. But the moment it becomes effort-driven, the signal changes. Your body no longer sees calm movement. It sees demand, stress, and with that, cortisol rises. Once cortisol rises too sharply, your system shifts back into protection mode. Visceral fat responds by tightening its grip again, not releasing. This is why slower is actually better, because the goal is not performance. It's signal control. The second mistake is drinking coffee immediately after waking. Caffeine itself is not the issue, but timing is everything. Right after you wake up, your body already experiences a natural cortisol rise. It's part of waking up. If you add strong caffeine on top of that, you amplify the response. Instead of a smooth activation, you create a spike. And again, your body interprets that spike as pressure, not safety. The third mistake is doing too much. Long walks, extended fasting, trying to push the routine further. At first, it feels productive, but over time, it creates imbalance. Blood sugar can drop too low. Cortisol rises to compensate, and the system becomes unstable again. The goal was to create balance, but now you've introduced stress. And finally, the most subtle mistake of all, expecting fast results. This routine is not designed to create immediate visual changes. It doesn't force fat loss overnight. It changes your hormonal environment. And that takes time. When people expect quick results, they become impatient. They add more intensity, more restriction, more pressure. And once again, they break the system. Because the moment this routine becomes stressful, competitive, or obsessive, it stops working. The principle is simple. This is not about pushing your body. It's about guiding it. The more you try to force the outcome, the further you move away from it. But when you keep it simple, calm, and consistent, your body begins to respond, not because you demanded it, but because you finally gave it the right signal. At this point, everything comes down to one simple shift. This is not about discipline. It's about negotiation. You are not forcing your body to burn fat. You are communicating with it. Every morning, your body is asking a silent question. Is this a safe environment or a stressful one? And your actions answer that question. Not your goals, not your intentions, but your signals. When you rush, push, and stimulate your system, your body responds with protection. But when you move calmly, use energy gently, and stay balanced, your body responds with release. This changes everything, because now, instead of fighting your biology, you are working with it. And when you do that, fat loss is no longer a struggle. It becomes a natural outcome. So here's something simple you can try. For the next 7 days, don't change your diet. Don't add more workouts. Don't overthink it. Just focus on your morning. Wake up. Stay calm. Move gently. Let your body use the energy it already has. And then observe. Notice how your energy feels, how your hunger changes, how your body responds throughout the day. Because those signals will tell you more than any scale ever could. And now I'm curious. Have you ever noticed a difference in how your body feels depending on how you start your morning? Let me know in the comments. Because sometimes the smallest shift creates the biggest change. Take a moment and think about this. Your body was not designed to sit all day. It was built to move. Every step you take, every stretch, every small movement, you are sending a powerful signal to your body. I am alive, I am active, I am strong. You don't need intense workouts. You don't need complicated routines. Just start simple. A short walk in the morning. A few minutes of movement after meals. choosing to move instead of staying still. Because over time, these small actions add up. They improve your circulation. They stabilize your energy. They support your heart, your muscles, and even your mind. And most importantly, they give you back control of your health. So starting today, don't wait for motivation. Just begin. Move your body every single day. Because the best investment you can make is in your own health. See you in the next video.